Dis Dinsdag en Dinsdag is tyd vir Agri Monitor. Baie welkom by hierdie episode. Nou ja, vandag kyk ons weer terug na die Agrivooruitskouingskonferensie. Daar was so baie interessante sprekers gewees en ons het nou oor 'n tyd vir julle van daai lesings gebring. En vandag gesels professor André Jooste van die departement landbou-ekonomie aan die Universiteit Stellenbosch oor die impak wat COVID-19 as ook die konflik nou tussen die Oekraïne en Rusland op landbou wêreldwyd het, op die voorsieningskettings en wat ons in die toekoms kan verwag. Dit dan 'n lekker nuusgesprek daar uit die Agrivooruitskouingskonferensie se lokaal vroeër vandeesmaand by die Safari Hotel. In Plaas Toe gesels Hatting met Markus du Plessis. Hy is by Feedmaster en hulle gesels oor hoenderboerdery. Alles van waarom lêhenne en braaikuikens nie op dieselfde perseel aangehou word nie. Ook oor voeding. Hy gee wenke oor goeie voeding vir hoenders en dan ook oor probleme soos prolapse wat by lêhenne kan voorkom. Nou ja, bly ingeskakel en kyk dan lekker saam vir die volgende halfuur of wat.
Funding part of it and the risk aspects that are related to the potato production is also quite.
If you look there on the right hand side, one of those purple dots there at the bottom, that is basically South Africa, which is the biggest economy here in the southern tip of Africa, or part of SARC or SADC. Basically contributing 0.4% to global GDP. So the point is, everything that takes place globally will have an impact on our countries, and as we know, and as you have been seeing over the last couple of months and years, it will also directly impact what is happening on my farm. And how do I structure my farm, and how do I actually ensure resilience of my farm? The number of risks and events taking place in the last 15 years has increased in frequency. I think the biggest one that we know of in recent history is our 2008-9 global economic meltdown, which caused a lot of disruptions. Then we had our COVID, and now we have the Russian-Ukraine war, with some smaller events obviously in between. And all of these have changed the way that we are thinking about global value, changed the way that we have to manage our business. And at the end of the day, how do we make sure that our business is resilient in these uncertain times? And these events are going to take place more and more frequently over time. Okay, so let's look at some of the global drivers of change. Let me refer to them as that. It's important to take these things into account because they impact the way that we do business. They impact in the way that some of the decisions that we take today, they will impact on those decisions going forward. So if we look at population growth, 9 billion people by 2050, and very important, 70% of those people will be living in cities by 2050. And if you look at the right-hand side of that slide, you will see that most of that population growth will actually be taking place on the African continent and in Asia. If we look at the next slide, we're looking at income changes and the consumer base is changing. Let me put all of the slides up there and I can just talk to them. We're looking at changes in consumer preferences, the way that consumers operate. You can see that there is a significant move to more healthier foods, the way that people consume their food. For example, in many countries, our developed countries, more than 50% of meals that are consumed out of home. So how do we as an agricultural sector and how do we participate in the rest of the chain to ensure that we get a piece of that pie for consumers that are consuming their meals out of home? Obviously during COVID that situation changed a bit. Another significant driver is the whole issue of climate change, and I'm not going to go into the detail of these slides because I will not have enough time to discuss all of this. But I think the evidence is shown there on the right-hand side that we are currently seeing changes as far as our climate is concerned. There is some tangible evidence there as you look at Nepal. The concerning factor here is, and this is what we need to take note of, and we yesterday had a presentation of one of the academics here in Namibia, Professor Helmke Sartorius van Bach, where he specifically focused on the meat value chain, and one of the issues that he flagged is the whole issue of climate change, where the blame is actually going. So this next photograph is actually quite telling of what is happening globally. The major emitters of CO2 emission gas globally is not the agricultural sector. However, the amount of money being put into the propaganda to show that agriculture is actually the main culprit is just astounding. And the question that we need to ask ourselves as an agricultural sector is how do we mitigate that propaganda to ensure that we are actually not the culprits. Because we have to adapt to consumer taste and preferences because of this propaganda that is taking place. Okay. In South Africa, for example, the agricultural sector is only responsible for about 2% of the emissions that is taking place. The problem with all of this is that the agricultural sector is made the culprit of other industries that are not mitigating CO2 emissions. Does it hold a threat, and do we have to actually act on this? Yes, we have to act on this because we have increased risk of droughts, we have increasing temperatures, and the whole risk of how climate is impacting on the agricultural sector is basically increasing over time.
I'm Markus from Feedmaster. I'm here on a chicken farm today, and I would just like to explain to you a little bit more about the prolapses of these birds. In particular, prolapses is where basically the cloaca of the bird is basically causing a red bloodness on the eggs of the chicken, and because of the blood on the eggs, that normally causes the birds to start pecking each other, and then the birds can kill each other. So you don't necessarily want that. Many birds die in the process, and for every bird that dies, you don't get an egg the next day of that specific bird, and then your profit would decrease. There are multiple reasons for that, in particular why prolapses actually happen. Prolapses could be because you didn't raise the birds correctly. So if I can advise you, always try to buy the correct birds from a trusted supplier, which have showed you that the birds were raised on the correct feed, had the correct vaccination programs, and then also were looked well after during the raising process of the birds. On this specific farm, we have a problem that the prolapses happen. There's about 3 birds every week that die because of prolapses, and you don't want that because that really digs into your profitability and at the end of the day. Nutrition plays a very important role in this as well, because Feedmaster's nutritional that we actually give the birds should be administered correctly. Otherwise, if the birds do not get enough nutrition, or if the birds have not good access to water or other types of medication, such as let's say vitamins and minerals, then these birds might also tend to have deficiencies, and that causes them to not be as productive as they should. So that's something that really should be considered. I just wanted to emphasize it for you guys. You can see how these birds are actually, you can see the feeder that these birds are eating from is quite elevated, and it's hanging from the roof. And this is a good thing because the birds don't defecate in their own food. And other things that also help them is that they don't jump on and sit on their own feeder, which can cause them to also defecate in their feeder. It's also more comfortable, as you can see, it's on crop level to these birds, so it's much more comfortable for them to actually use it. You can also see here on the side, you can see the water is also elevated and the birds are much more comfortable in actually drinking the water. So yeah, this is a good example of how you can properly manage your drinkers and your feeders inside of your cage. Another thing that you should consider is that using the correct type of feed. These birds, they are actually sexually matured, so they would be on a layer mash 100 with Larvadex is the type of product that they use currently with these birds. But because they were not necessarily raised correctly most of the time, that could be the reason why they have prolapses. Raising hens correctly, normally we don't want to put it in a person's hands to do it himself. We want them actually to buy the point of lays, which are actually birds that are ready to start laying eggs from a trusted supplier, because those people are specialized in raising layers. So we don't necessarily want to put it in the consumer's hands or the producer's hands, but in the end of the day, they can do it if they would like to do it. But what is really important about that is the bird should be kept warm for the first 6 weeks of the development. Otherwise, that can have a big effect on them. They won't grow as effective. And nutrition is a very, very important thing. They have to follow the correct nutritional plan with a pullet starter, then a pullet grower, and then a pullet developer, and after that a layer mash for the birds that have started producing eggs. So if you don't follow the correct protocol and program, vaccination programs are also very important. They have to be properly vaccinated against all the big diseases in the country. So I think that's important that we actually do that as well. Then you'll have a correct bird. You have to do the weights of the birds. You have to weigh them to make sure that they're growing for the correct age that they are. And I think you should also consider such things as who you're going to sell the birds to in the end of the day. That's important going to be as well. What age do you want to sell them? Do you want to sell them at point of lay or at a younger age? Some clients prefer them at a little bit younger age to help them adapt better. So it depends on your market, what your market wants. You'll also determine how you raise your birds in the end of the day. Yeah. Another thing we also wanted to explain to you guys is on this specific farm, we are here with a little bit of older flock. So this means that these hens are quite older. And when these hens are older, they tend to stop laying eggs. But how will you actually start noticing that these hens are getting too old to start laying eggs? You can see a prime example of a normal hen and a hen that is actually stopping to lay eggs. They normally tend to reduce the size of eggs as they, first of all, that's in the end of their cycle when they stop laying eggs, and normally when they begin laying eggs. So that's just to show you a little bit more about how eggs can also indicate to you the age of your birds and when you should actually start considering of getting rid of the birds and getting yourself a new flock of birds. So layers and broilers should not be kept on the same farm because they are different in their immunity. So because they are different in their immunity, the layers can normally make the smaller broilers, they can make them sick, and that can cause big financial problems for you if you don't actually have if they start getting sick and they start dying at the end of the day. So you don't want that problem to actually persist. So try to keep your broilers and layers as far away as possible from each other and have different workers for different sites that these birds are on. As far as possible, I mean like a kilometer away from each other. That's most probably the ideal. There are some farmers that actually have them closer together, which actually do make a success, but you want to spread your risks, especially if you have such a big operation and you want to make money out of it. It's your main income. So yeah, you should really consider that. Yeah, the broiler industry is doing great at this time of the year because we're done with the cold season now. So the earth is warming up now, and because of that it makes it much better for these birds to actually grow much better. So it's also, we're in the month of October now, and it's the ideal month to order your broilers. Because if you order your broilers today, you'll receive your chicks in November, and then you are ready for Christmas when you want to slaughter your broilers in December. And that's when the biggest demand in the country is. So if you want to order, this is the best time of the year to actually start farming with broilers. You can make the most money during this time of year, because December is the month where most of the broilers are actually consumed in the country. If we're looking at layers are doing great throughout the year, because layers in particular, they are producing eggs every single day. And during the winter seasons, they normally don't produce that much good eggs, but that's because of not enough sunlight. And you can counter that by actually putting lights inside your facility, so that can help you a lot as well. Other things that you should consider is also that when you're doing layers, you should think of it that there are many people walking in this country, but they need protein. And this is the cheapest form of protein. So if you're starting with layer farming, you'll have a lot of eggs for protein for people every day. And there's a lot of people walking around with $5 or $10 in their pocket every day, which cannot afford to eat other types of protein such as cattle, sheep or goat meat. And they need some form of protein. And this is the cheapest form of protein that they can get. So you can easily sell this to people. And it's also nicely packed into a nice little eggshell. Yes, I'm based here in Grootfontein area, so that's the place where I mostly operate with my farmers here. I go to Oshikati, Ondangwa, and also have a colleague that's also working in Ondangwa. She is Beata Aula, and you can contact her as well if you would like. You can just follow our Facebook page and also look at our website, and you can see on Feedmaster's website where you can find us. Our contact details are all available there as well. So I move around from Windhoek, I go to Rundu, to Oshikati, all around the country. I move to specific farms, normally farms that have problems regarding diseases. We also have a poultry vet available, Mrs. Kirsten Vogts. She's actually a doctor, Dr. Kirsten Vogts. She is traveling with me across the country and with my colleagues, and then also Mr. Driekus Delpoort, which is a nutritionalist. We travel the country and go to bigger poultry farms, visit them, advise them on what they might need from a health perspective. We try to help them as much as we can, yeah. If you have any other questions regarding poultry farming, feel free to contact me. I'm Markus from Feedmaster, and my contact numbers is 081 63 540 61.
Nou ja, volgende aan die beurt, dan soos ons gebruiklik elke Dinsdag doen, ons kyk na die veilings vir die komende week. Daar's net so een item op ons landbou dagboek, waarop ek julle aandag wil vestig, en dan die vleispryse. Wat die veilings betref, op 26 Oktober het WLA by Gobabe se veiling, Nambour en Windhoek, Blouberg op Grootfontein en NLA op Aranos. Op die 27ste Nambour hier in Windhoek die Algap stoetvee veiling, NLA het op die plaas Gorhuis by Kois die hoogvertoon stoetveiling, dit is van Annette Steyn en Onkola Steyn. En dan Agri het op Keetmanshoop, Karasburg en Otjiwarongo veilings. Op die 28ste Oktober het Nambour in Windhoek 'n losgoedveiling en Agri by Gobabes en Otawe veilings. Dan op die 29ste Oktober Saterdag bied Nambour hulle wildveiling daar by Zeehuis aan en die 1 November het Agri op reëlbotte veiling. Onthou op die 3 November volgende week kuier die Suid-Afrikaanse landbou-ekonom en rubriekskrywer vir Landbou Weekblad en Sake 24, Professor Johan Willemse in Windhoek. Hy word hierheen gebring deur Netwerk Namibië en hy gaan 'n gasspreker wees by hulle sakeontbyt. Elis Matron is die kontakpersoon en julle kan aan haar 'n e-pos stuur as julle dit wil bywoon. Die koste is R250 per persoon, wat dan natuurlik die ontbyt insluit. Hy is werklik 'n baie goeie spreker en iemand met goeie gegronde kennis oor landbou en landbou-ekonomie, en is lekker altyd om na Prof Willemse te luister. Wat die vleispryse betref, dit is nou vir die week van 17 Oktober, verlede week, die abattoirpryse kan julle daar sien, dis nou Meatco, suid van die rooi lyn, beefcore as ook Meatco in die gebied noord van die rooi lyn, in die sogenaamde noordelike kommunale gebied. Die verskillende pryse kan julle dan nou daar sien. En dan wat die veilings betref, tollies verlede week gemiddeld 40 Namibiese dollar 24 sent per kilogram behaal, verse $36.91, stoorosse, $32.71, stoorverse 31 Namibiese dollar 39 sent, slagosse $31.94, slagverse $31.52, koeie, afhangend van hoe vet of maar hulle was, kan julle die pryse daar sien gewissel van 25 Namibiese dollar en 19 sent en $31.72. Slagbulle gemiddeld $28.36. Dan slagskape, dorpers en vetsterte onderskeidelik 35 Namibiese dollar 59 sent en $36.27. Bokke gemiddeld stuk 1376 sent en koeie met kalvers wat dan 13.633 gemiddeld behaal het. Dit bring my aan die einde van vandag se uitsending. Ek groet julle en wens julle 'n baie geseënde week toe. Totsiens.